My name's Dwight O'Hara. I've been with ProCut for at least 25 years, more than a quarter century. For 25 years, we focused entirely on the car brake lathes, but now we're doing bench lathes as well. Brake resurfacing equipment includes now bench lathes, and even now the tire trolley for mounting and dismounting wheels and tires. We talk about replacing a disc versus repairing the disc, but really the point isn't that you're going to do either one or the other, it's that you're going to do the proper repair each time when it comes in. And if you don't have the ability to resurface the disc instead of replacing it, then you're just not going to have the tools you need to do the job right for a lot of customers. You're not prepared to do the most efficient and most profitable repair from your own perspective. And so to have something that, sure, you're going to replace certain discs, but you're going to resurface an awful lot of them, and in all those cases, it's going to be the absolute best repair you can provide for that customer at the best price for them. At the same time, you're doing more service and less replacing. You know, your margin is better on service than it is on parts. And so an opportunity to do something where you win by doing a more efficient and more profitable job, and your customer wins by getting the best possible job for their car, the most long-lasting smooth brakes. A situation where everybody wins is rare in life, and so that's what the ProCut machine can offer. For certain customers, if a disc is inexpensive, if it's readily available and you can have it right here, then the most efficient thing for you to do may be to replace that disc. But in many cases, either the components are expensive, they're difficult to get, or what are you going to do when a dually comes in? What are you going to do when a four-wheel drive that's difficult to assemble comes in? Then you can be spending hours doing that. There's an inefficiency inherent in not knowing how long something's going to take. Every time you go to replace, it's not just the act of replacing the disc, you also have to wait for that disc to show up. You have to hope that it's going to be the right disc when it does show up, and you've lost control of the process. You don't know how long that's going to take. When you're using the ProCut machine to resurface, then you're controlling the process. You know how much time it's going to take. That fixes your cost. It fixes the price that you need to charge the customer. So it's a benefit for the service provider because they know how long it's going to take and they know how much it's going to cost them to do that repair. It's also a benefit for the driver because they know how much their brake repair is going to cost. If you have discs in stock for every vehicle that you might fix, replacing a disc, sure, the process of actually replacing it is fast on many vehicles, not on every vehicle. Of course, 4x4s, dual-wheel trucks, certain vehicles are going to be time-consuming anyway. Even on the economy vehicles, to truly talk about efficiency, you have to talk about how long you're going to wait for that disc to arrive, whether it's always the right disc once it arrives, and so forth, because all those things will add up and affect the efficiency of the job that you're doing. There's even just the simple concepts that if a technician stays in the bay and resurfaces the disc, then they're staying focused on the task. We know what they're doing. They're not getting distracted by other things. If they need to leave the bay to go and get the replacement discs for that job, then they're leaving their workstation. We don't know who they got to walk past in the shop to get there. The inefficiencies tend to add up when it comes to the distractions, the other things that they get carried away with when it comes to doing this. Using the ProCut takes a little over 10 minutes to do a pair of rotors. I've been talking to shops for years about how many jobs they can expect to do in a day or a week, and I've also been looking at the numbers. Our machines have a counter on them, like an odometer, that tells how many times that they've been used. In the busiest shops, a machine is doing 24 and more discs per day. The limitation really has to do with you're only doing 2 per job, and a job takes about an hour. Brake job takes about an hour. In an 8-hour day, you'd be doing 8 brake jobs. The ProCut portion of that job is only a few minutes, so it really depends on how quickly you can move that machine between bays and how efficient you can be in the shop. Technicians also benefit from having the ProCut because it allows them to complete the repair in a shorter amount of time. More and more technicians are flat rate technicians, so they're getting paid by the job, and the ProCut allows them to do a job. Maybe they're getting paid 1.6 for a brake job. That might traditionally take them an hour or so to do. If the ProCut helps them do that in 50 minutes, then it's money that they're putting in their pocket. We have a lot of technicians who refer to our machine as the gravy machine or the gravy maker, because it allows them to beat those book times on these jobs. When I'm talking to shops about whether they should consider resurfacing discs, almost always tell me they have no interest in resurfacing because they're happy doing what they're doing. The common thread between these people is they're not even interested, they have no interest. Once they see the process in their shop and once they evaluate how it's going to affect their business, you get a total 360 where suddenly they're saying, this is one of the greatest pieces of equipment that I've invested in. I remember stopping at an independent shop up in Canada, in Ontario, and this was a shop that had 2 bays, and they're fixing all kinds of cars. And looking out from their shop, we could see a sign on the other side of the street that said "Brake Jobs $99." It was actually a muffler shop, and it said "Brake Jobs $99." And so, of course, going in and seeing that shop, when we first start talking to them about a $12,000 piece of equipment for resurfacing discs, they're pointing out the window and saying, "Look at what I've got to compete with." But then once we showed them that for premium customers, and in their case, it happened to be a landscaping contractor who was in there. They had a couple of dual-wheel trucks. They had trucks and trailers that they were maintaining for these guys. And when we showed them that they could do a 4-wheel job on one of these landscaping trucks for $500, a brake job for $500, they showed us that they were typically paying $1,900 for the brake jobs on those because of the expensive components, the expensive discs for those, and also because of the time that it takes to disassemble and reassemble those. When that shop understood that they could do a $500 job instead of a $1,900 job, they got pretty excited about what they were doing. Then we went back and talked to them later, and what they told us was that they were doing twice as much service for that landscaping contractor that they'd been done. And so they really got it as far as how that could change their business. Even though the people right across the street were doing literally a $99 brake job, or at least that was advertised at, that's how they get them in and so forth. Even though that was the competitive environment they were in, once they understood that they could retain these customers by saying, look, we have the option to give you a better, more inexpensive, but still proper and OEM certified repair, it really changed their business for the better. So hearing stories like that, that's what keeps us going here at ProCut. When you say that replacing everything is your first choice, what you're doing is you're discarding a premium OEM brake disc that isn't worn out in favor of replacing it with a replacement component that who knows the quality of that disc. You're discounting the fact that the original equipment brake disc that vehicle was equipped with, it was built by the OEM, it's the right component, and it's often a better quality component than what you might replace it with. Shops that are fixing brakes, they want to make money doing it, but shops that are fixing brakes want to do the job right. There certainly are cases when replacing the disc is the right thing to do, and that specifically is when the disc is worn out. I can think of 3 good reasons why you would resurface instead of repairing. Longevity of repair. Efficiency would be another one. Control how long it's going to take instead of waiting for somebody else to provide you with components. Cost would be a driver. Cost might be the third one for premium vehicles or vehicles that are difficult to disassemble. It costs a lot more to replace a disc on certain jobs. When I'm out there talking to service providers about replacing discs versus repairing discs, often they'll ask me, why would I want to replace something that's so inexpensive? And certain discs are really inexpensive, but there's actually just as many discs now that are increasingly expensive. Now I'm spending more and more time sitting in office, but people know I'm in the automotive industry. They know that I work with brakes. Increasingly, I get calls from people saying, do I really need a $1,000 or a $1,500 brake job on my car? Yes, there are still certain vehicles, economy vehicles, where the discs are inexpensive, but more and more people are driving late model cars or premium cars that a brake job just doesn't cost a couple $100s anymore, or even a few $100s. It starts to get into the thousands of dollars, and then they really want an option. People want a repair option. So for years we've been working so closely with the different OEMs, the different auto manufacturers, even to the point where they show us new vehicles before they come out so that they make sure that we're going to be ready to service them since we're a part of their warranty service programs. You know, that gives us a glimpse into the future of what's going to happen next. As connected as we've been as far as talking with the vehicle manufacturers, but even as we work with the suppliers who build the braking systems for these modern cars, we learn a lot about brakes, but really the most we learn about brakes is from the technicians who are actually resurfacing these discs, and even from the customer feedback they get from the driver. So at that level is really where we're getting connection with the customer is really our best source of information. If you're not prepared to zero the lateral run out in the braking assembly, if you're not prepared to match the disc to the hub that it's going to turn on, then you're not prepared to do a proper repair for somebody who's had brake vibration. Once customers learn of the science behind rotor matching and the importance of matching a rotor to the disc that it rides on, we do have customers who decide, hey, maybe I should be resurfacing every brake disc I put on. I think that might be overkill, but certainly understanding the importance of the matching, when you replace an old disc with new, then carefully consider, has this vehicle ever had brake pedal pulsation? Because if it has, you ought to consider zeroing that run out with a Pro Cut. I feel like our machine has been ahead of its time for a lot of years and that it already has been well suited for modern vehicles. The most interesting thing that Pro Cut is doing in terms of modern vehicles and changing vehicles these days is actually the new mule, the tire trolley. As wheels and tires get larger and heavier, increasingly removing a wheel and tire is something that ends up being a pain point, maybe literally a pain point where it's unpleasant and even an injury risk as you remove and mount these bigger and heavier wheels and tires. The mule is going to allow technicians who are mounting and dismounting these heavier wheel and tire assemblies to do both a safer and easier job. Customers should trust Pro Cut because this is all we do. We've focused on brake resurfacing equipment for decades now, and we don't have anything else to fall back on. If we ever had a problem with our core product, we're not going to rely on something else and say, oh, we can let that one go away. We have to be the best at what we do. Since this is all we do, we absolutely have, it drives us to be the best. It's sort of a mandate that we have to do things right. We are fully invested in this business. This is all we do, and it's our sole focus.